Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. 48 laws of power. Law 4. Always say less than necessary. I know I have a good friend. And she got that one down pat. She don't respond. She don't say much of anything. Don't listen. If she tell you anything, that means you have to be a close friend. Then I have friends that just talk too much, tell everything. And to those people, you better not tell your business because it's going to be everywhere. And that's a fact. So I try to just answer the question and don't add anything else. You see what I'm saying? Just say just enough without revealing the total plan, you know? So this is a good law to live by. I didn't even know it was a law in the 48 laws of power. When you are trying to impress people with words, the more you say, the more common you appear and the less in control. Wow. Even if you are saying something banal, it will seem original if you make it vague, open ended, and sphinx like. Powerful people impress and intimidate by saying less. Wow. The more you say, the more likely you are to say something foolish. That's a fact. Let me see. Excuse me. Genevus Marvis, who also known as Caligulus, was a great military Caligulus was a great military hero of ancient Rome. In the first half of the 5th century BC, he won many important battles, saving the city from calamities time and time again. Because he spent most of his time on the battlefield, few Romans knew him personally, making him something of a legendary figure. In 454 BC, Cornelius decided it was time to exploit his reputation in inner politics. He stood for election to the high rank of consul. Candidates for this position traditionally made public address early in the race, and when Caligula came before the people, he began by displaying the dozens of scars he had accumulated over the 17 years of fighting for Rome. Few in the crowd really heard the lengthy speech that followed. Those scars, proof of his valor and patriotism, moved the people to tears. Caligula's reflection seemed certain. When the arrived, polling day arrived, however, Caligula made an entry into the forum escorted by the entire Senate and by the city's patrons, the aristocracy. The common people who saw this were disturbed by such a blustering show of confidence on election day. And then Cornelius spoke again, mostly addressing the wealthy citizens who had accompanied him. His words were arrogant and insolent. Claiming sudden victory in a vote, he boasted of his battlefield exploits, made sour jokes that appealed only to the part to the Parthians, voiced angry accusations against his opponents and speculate on the riches he would bring to Rome. This time the people listened. They had not realized that this legendary soldier was also a common braggart. News of Cornelius' second speech spread quickly through Rome, and the people turned out in great numbers to make sure he was not elected. Defeated, Cornelius returned to the battlefield bitter and vowing revenge to the common folk who had voted against him. Some weeks later, a large shipment of grain arrived in Rome. The Senate was ready to distribute the food to the people for free, but just as they were preparing to vote on the question, Cornelius appeared in the scene and took the Senate floor. The distribution, he argued, would have a harmful effect on the city as a whole. Several senators appeared won over, and the vote on distribution fell into doubt. Cornelius did not stop there. He went on to condemn the concept of democracy itself. He advocated getting rid of the people's representation, representation the triunes, and turning over the governing of the cities to the patriots. When word of Cornelius' latest speech reached the people, their anger knew no bounds. The tribunes were sent to the Senate to demand that Cornelius appear before them. He refused. Riots broke out all over the city. The Senate, fearing the people's wrath, finally voted in favor of grain distribution. The tribunes were appeased, but the people still demanded that Cornelius speak to them and apologize. If he repented and agreed to keep his opinion to himself, he would be allowed to return to the battlefield. Cornelius did appear one last time before the people, who listened to him in silence. He started slowly and softly, but then as the speech went on, he became more and more blunt. Yet again he hurled results. His tone was arrogant, the expression disdainful. The more he spoke, the angrier the people became. Finally, they shouted him down and silenced him. The tribunes conferred, condemned Cornelius to death, and ordered the magistrates to take him at once to the top of the rock and throw him over. Wow. The delighted crowd seconded the decision. The patriots, however, managed to intervene, and the sentence was commuted to a lifelong banishment. When the people found out that Rome's great military hero would never return to the city, they celebrated in the streets. In fact, no one had ever seen such celebration, not even after the debate of a foreign enemy. Wow. This is 48 Laws of Power. Law 4, which is always say less. And that makes so much sense. The less you say, the better off. Let the people talk to you, and you just sit there and listen. I don't give no more than what you ask me a question or you ask me something. That's all you're gonna get is the answer. You ain't getting no more, no less. Keep your information to yourself. Before his interest into politics, the name Cornelius evoked awe. His battlefield accomplishments showed him as a man of great bravery. Since the citizens knew little about him, all kinds of legends became attached to his name. The moment he appeared before the Roman citizens, however, and spoke his mind, all the grandeur and mystery vanished. He bragged and blustered like a common soldier. He insulted, slandered the people as if he felt threatened and insecure. Suddenly, he was not at all what the people had imagined. This discrepancy between the legend and the reality proved disappointing to those who had wanted to believe in their hero. The more Cornelius said, the less powerful he appeared. A person who cannot control his words. Ooh, a person who cannot control his words shows that he cannot control himself and is unworthy of respect. God dog it, if that. Wow, I got to read that again. A person who cannot control his words shows that he cannot control himself and he is unworthy of respect. Wow. Had Cornelius said less, the people would never had cause to be offended by him and would never have known his true feelings. He would have maintained his powerful aura, would certainly have been elected council and would have been able to accomplish his anti democratic goals. But the human tongue is a beast that few can master. Ooh, that's good. Ooh. The human tongue is a beast that few can master. It strains constantly to break out of cage, and if it is not tamed, it will run wild and cause you grief. Power cannot accrue to those who squander the treasure of words. God, oh, I'm going to bed good tonight. Power cannot accrue to those who squander their treasures of words. Mm. In the court of Louis XIV, nobles and ministers would spend days and nights debating issues of state. They would confer, argue, make and break alliances, argue again, and then finally critical moment arrived. Two of them would be chosen to represent the different sides to Louis himself, who would decide what should be done. After these persons were chosen, oh, this was a quick, oh, it's almost good, because I got to go to bed. Everyone will argue some more. How should the issues be faced? What would appeal to Lewis? What would annoy him? At what time of the day should the representatives approach him, and what is the part of Versailles Palace? What expression should they have on their faces? Finally, after all this was settled, the fatal moment was finally arrived. The two men would approach Lewis, always a delicate matter, and when they finally had his ear, they would talk about the issue at hand, spelling out the options in detail. Lewis would listen in silence, a most enamored look on his face. Finally, when each had finished their presentation and had asked for the king's opinion, he would look at them both and say, I shall see. Then he would walk away. Damn, that's powerful. Mm, say less, walk away. That's powerful. The ministers and corridors would never hear another word on the subject from the king. They would simply see the result weeks later when he would come to his decision and act. He would never bother to consult them on the matter again. Damn, that's powerful. Louis XIV was a man of very few words. His most famous remark is, I am the state. Nothing could be more powerfully yet more eloquent. His infamous I shall see was one of the several extremely short phrases that he would apply to all matter of request. I shall see. Mm. Lewis was not always this way. As a young man, he was known for talking at length, delighting in his own eloquence. He let his later um, tact was self-imposed and act a mask he used to keep everyone below him off balance. No one knew exactly where he stood or could predict his reactions. No one could try to deceive him by saying what they thought he wanted to hear because no one knew what he wanted to hear. As they talked on and on to the silent Lewis, they revealed more and more about themselves. That is a fact. People do it all the time. You just sit there and don't say nothing or say very little, and they just talk and tell everything. That is a fact. I know that to be true. Mm. They revealed more and more about themselves, information he would later use against them. You further the information he would use against them to great effect. Wow. In the end, Louis' silence kept those around him terrified and under his thumb. It was one of the foundations of his power. As Saint Simon wrote, no one knew as well as he how to seal his words, his smile, even his glances. Everything in him was valuable because he created differences, and his majesty was enhanced by the sparseness, the less words that he used. That is powerful. Power is in many ways a game of appearances, and when you say less than necessary, you inevitably appear greater and more powerful than you are. Your silence will make other people uncomfortable. That is a fact. Humans are machines of interpretation and explanation. They have to know what you are thinking. When you carefully control what you reveal, they cannot pierce your intentions or your meaning. Ooh, that is so true. That is so true. Your short answers and silences will put them on defensive, and they will jump in nervously, filling with the silence with all kind of commands or comments that will reveal valuable information about them and their weaknesses. That is a oh my God. Oh my God. I live by this law. Oh my God. They will leave a meeting with you feeling as if they had been robbed, and they will go home and ponder your every word. The extra attention to your brief comments will only add to your power. Saying less than necessary is not for kings and statesmen only. In most areas of life, the less you say, the more profound and mysterious you appear. As a young man, the artist Andy Warhol had the revelation that it was generally impossible to get people to do what you wanted them to do by talking to them. Damn. They would turn against you, subvert your wishes, disobey you out of sheer perversity. He once had told a friend, I learned that you actually have more power when you shut up. That's true. In his later life, Warhol employed this, this strategy with great success. His interviews were exercises in ocular speech. He would say something vague and ambiguous, and the interviewer would twist in circles trying to figure it out, imagining that there was something profound behind his often meaningless phrases. Warhol rarely talked about his work, he let others do the interpreting. That's true, he did. He claimed to have learned this technique from a master of enigma, Marcel Duchamp, another 20th century artist who realized early on that the less he said about his work, the more people talked about it. And the more they talked, the more valuable his work became. By saying less than necessary, you create the appearance of meaning and power. Also, the less you say, the less risk you run of saying something foolish, even dangerous. That's a fact. In 1825, a new Caesar, Nicholas I, ascended the throne of Russia. A rebellion broke out, led by the liberals, demanding that the country modernize about its industries and civil structures catch up with the rest of Europe. Brutally crushing this rebellion, Nicholas, wait a minute, what happened? Nicholas sent one of his leaders to death. On the day of the execution, Raleigh stood on the gallows, the noose around his neck, the trapdoor open, but as Raleigh dangled, the rope broke, dashing him to the ground. At the time, the events that this were considered signs of dashing him to the ground. At the time, events like this were considered signs of providence of heavenly will and a man saved from execution. As Raleigh got to his, who is this? Oh yeah, hey, yep, yep. Well, that's another way. Yep. As Raleigh got to his, what was this? His feet bruised and dirtiest out, believing his neck had been saved, he called out to the crowd. You see, in Russia, they don't know how to do anything properly, not even how to make rope. A messenger immediately went to the Winter Palace with news of the hanging. Vexed by the disappointment turnout, Nicholas said, "Did Raleigh say anything after this miracle?" The Caesar asked. "Sire," the messenger replied, "he said that in Russia they don't even know how to make rope. In that case, let us prove the contrary." And he tore up the pardon. The next day, Raleigh was hanged again. This time, the rope did not break. Learn the lesson. Once the words are out, you cannot take them back. Keep them under control. Damn, that's good. By particularly careful with sarcasm, the commentary satisfaction you gain with biting words will be outweighed by the price you pay. Damn, that's good. Wow, I got to read that again. That is good. What did it say? The momentary satisfaction you gain with your biting words will be outweighed by the price you pay. Damn, that's good. That's law 4. Say less. Wow. Okay, this is the last paragraph. There are times when it is unwise to be silent. Silence can arouse suspicion and even insecurity, especially in your superiors. A vague or ambiguous comment can open you up to interpretation you had not bargained for. Silence and saying less than necessary must be practiced with caution. Then and in the right situations, it is occasionally wiser to imitate the court jester who plays the fool but knows he is smarter than the king. He talks and talks and entertains, and no one suspects that he is more than just a fool. Also, words can sometimes act as a kind of smokescreen for any deception you might practice. By bending your listener's ear with talk, you can distract and mesmerize them. The more you talk, in fact, the less suspicious of you they become. I don't know if that's true. You think that's true, don't you? The less suspicious because they talk too damn much? Hmm. I don't think that's true. The verbose are not perceived as sly and manipulative, but as helpless and unsophisticated. Dang, that's deep. I got to read that again. The verbose are not perceived as sly and manipulative, but as helpless and unsophisticated. This is the reverse of silent policy employed by the powerful. By talking more and making yourself appear weaker and less intelligent than your mark, you can practice deception with greater ease. Hey, that was good. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. All right, cool.